in every situation.
I think it's one of the many useful tools, but it's not the only one, because I think that some of the more formalised project and programme management approaches have something to offer in terms of stakeholder engagement, benefits management, and I think and change management, transition planning. I think for me, otherwise we end up going back to talking about projects producing outputs, you know, of a certain quality on a certain date, whereas I'm interested in, yes, but how do we then embed those within the organisations to realise the benefits from having them in the first place? So I think that Agile is one way to get us to, we've got what we need, but we also need to look at some of the other things that support that throughout, like stakeholder engagement, a rigorous understanding of the benefits we're supposed to be achieving, and making sure that we're making the changes to make that happen. Planning change.
Yeah, and I think some of what's behind the sort of the pause when you ask that question is there is a lot of, as with a lot of the project management language, there is a lot of misunderstanding and lack of clarity around what is understood by these different terms.
Right.
So Agile as an approach, I think, is very valuable. But I think people misinterpret Agile as a very rigorous, you have to use this every time, structured methodology for delivering projects, in the same way as people misuse Prince as a very robust, structured methodology that you have to use every time. For me, the real benefit, the real approach to being successful in delivering change via projects or programs is really to understand how we bring the different components that are most appropriate to our organization together and put them on the table in the right combination. Because if I'm doing, classically cutting edge development or R&D work or new product development, you know, having a really iterative, agile approach to doing that probably is the best way to deliver that sort of work. And there's certain things of agile methodology that I think have a really important part to play in the delivery of change, because we can become very structured and fuddy-duddy otherwise. But equally, it's not the only answer. No. And I think the piece that my critique of the conversation around project management is that as an industry almost, it's become very focused on some very methodological approaches that are kind of hooks that everyone just hangs off and bangs that drum without really understanding that it's really complex. And actually, you're going to bring lots of different things together, and the people who are really good at doing this stuff are the people in the organizations who bring best approaches together, who bring best of breed, best fit for the situation that they're in.
I think there's also a point about excluding people. There are an awful lot of non-IT people who are involved in projects, who are involved in the actual utilisation of what's being created from the IT side into the organisation, that can sometimes not understand some of the IT terms. They're struggling already with project management terminology, and now we're going to add some IT terminology into it as well. So I think we have to be quite careful about explaining that, you know, projects are open to all. And I think one of the things we have to create is an environment, a base structure that generally, as you said, when somebody comes into your office, they're talking business language. They get the gist of this is what we've got to achieve as an organisation, and some aspects of it are specialist IT aspects, application of agile method, for example. Some of it is specialist application of project management, but that we should make sure that it's understood by all, and not just, otherwise we're back to that whole, projects is something that the IT department does.
Yes.
And that's really been changing over the last few years. Really seen a change in people who are getting involved in project management. And I would not like to see us roll back to that, whereas that's nothing to do with me. That's some other part of the organisation.
Now, I suppose it's unsurprising that we will come to the conclusion that there's going to be different levels of detail required for different kinds of projects. So, you know, an agile approach would work for one, and we do a Prince 2 thing for another, and so on and so forth. Who actually decides what approach is required for a project? Is that the project office role?
No, that should be the project manager, to my book. That's the guy or the person who has responsibility and accountability. So the project manager, together with the sponsor for the project, who ultimately is going to be responsible for the benefits realisation. Between them, they should determine the approach.
Yeah. And that's that. Yeah, I think it's one of the first times we mentioned that word of sponsor, and that's just so critical to success. And again, sort of speaking from personal experience of being the dreaded sponsor, you know, and I'm sure we've all been sponsors of projects. And usually what happens is the first thing, the project manager identifies the sponsor, they kick off the project, then you hear the sound of the door slamming as the sponsor exits stage left and is never seen again for the rest of the project. And the project manager becomes the de facto sponsor, but has no organisational authority to change anything. And so actually one of my first pieces of advice for a project manager has always been find the sponsor and the key to his office door and lock him in it and never let him out until, you know, you've got him absolutely indoctrinated in the way that this project's going to work. Because it's the combination, I mean, there's lots of different people who need to be involved in a project, but the sponsor's so key. And often, as was the case with me 10 years ago, the sponsor won't understand project management, won't understand.
And they don't need to.
And they don't need to. And it's putting those people together, the subject matter knowledge with the organisational authority and embedding them. Because, as Dave rightly says, the benefits aren't delivered by the project manager. The project manager's packed up and gone home long before benefits are realised.
Yes.
Big mistake. It's the sponsor that realises the benefits.
Warm working relationship between project manager and project sponsor.
Yes. So it seems to me that that's where the blame culture could come in as well. Is that if the project sponsor just toddles off, they're just waiting to the end date and then seeing their lovely delivered project, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
it's not what I expected.
One final question for each of you then. I'd like to know what your experiences are of the key differentiators between a successful project and an unsuccessful one. Paul?
For me, key differentiator with a successful project is having a holistic approach that looks at people and gets the right skills, the right people on the bus, including sponsors, that looks at the processes and deploys pragmatic process, not process for the sake of ticking boxes, and then also has a structured control mechanism, which usually in our experience is technology enabled, to actually give you visibility and real-time information about what's happening in your organisation. If you do those things and you accept that my project is holistic, I have to understand change management, I have to understand business drivers, I have to understand technology impacts, then you have the basis for a successful project or programme.
Melanie?
I think an agreed structure of how this piece of work will be handled between the sponsor and the project manager, so that there is an ability to handle ambiguity and to handle change all the way through. If we agree that this is how we're going to approach this piece of work, step by step, everybody okay with that? Right, that's fine, because then the content can change and can keep meeting the business requirements.
David?
First and foremost, be clear about what success is. I think have an understanding of what you want to get out of the project, understand that at a high level. Within that, get everybody that's necessary to deliver the thing. Break down barriers between IT and business, break down barriers between customer and supplier, work collaboratively, empower the team. Give the people who are going to do the work the necessary resources that they need to do it, give them the knowledge, give them the support, and be prepared to adapt, be prepared to change, be agile.
David, Melanie, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.